Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse of Provincetown, where we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person and where we support each other on our spiritual search for truth and meaning. My name is Reverend Kate Wilkinson, and I am so glad that you have joined us this morning. Welcome to those of you in the room, and welcome also to those of you joining us on our live stream. Now, before I give a very special welcome to our guest musician today, I just wanted to say that I love how serendipity works sometimes. This week, both of our staff musicians, Mary and Brenda, are being caretakers for their family, and we lift them up in our hearts and offer gratitude that they are exactly where they need to be this morning. And you know, I told you that we were hosting a storytelling evening Tuesday night for Women's Week. Some of you were there. It was awesome. Well, in between the stories, some of the Women's Week performers offered a taste of their comedy or musical acts. And one of those performers was Renee Jansky, who just happens to be the music director at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Fayetteville, Arkansas. And we chatted a little bit Tuesday night, and when I reached out to her later in the week to see if she could sing this morning, she said, yes, yes.
Yes.
So a warm welcome to Renee. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, sister. Thank you.
Before we begin our worship service, I have just a few announcements to share. Today is Stewardship Sunday. This means that we are beginning to ask our members to fill out their pledge forms for next year. A pledge is a promise of what you think you'll be able to contribute financially to the Meetinghouse in the year 2023. Now, we're asking now because we're in the process of creating our 2023 budget that you all will be voting on at our annual meeting on December 4th. And we kind of need to know what we're working with. Will we have just enough money to keep the lights on, or will we also be able to pay our hardworking staff fairly and fund our shared ministry that reaches out beyond these walls and into the community? So, Meetinghouse members, we have paper copies of the pledge sheet downstairs, and you can also fill it out online. Kenneth will be sending out an email this week with that link, and it will also be on our homepage. But Meetinghouse friends and visitors, Stewardship Sunday is also for you because today we'll be talking about the role of gratitude and generosity in our lives, not just in this space, but how those things live in our lives as a whole and how we are shaped by them on our spiritual journeys. So we are glad you are here today too, because you'll want to hear this also. Now, as a follow-up, we hope that those who can will join us on Zoom today at 2 o'clock for our Stewardship Talk Soup. We'll be seeing one of Kathleen Henry's awesome stewardship videos and brainstorming together about what opportunities we see in this moment for our spiritual community. At the end of the stewardship part of the meeting, those who would like to stay on a little bit longer can join our board of directors for a conversation about our COVID protocols. We'd like to hear from you about your current comfort levels, and the board has a few ideas about shifting a few of our policies that we'd like to run by you. If you have been considering becoming a member of the Meetinghouse, don't forget to sign up for our new member class. It does look like that's going to be an online class. So even if you're not in town, you can join us, and that date is to be determined, but please sign up by contacting me or Kenneth in the office. Don't forget to bring some candy or wrapped treats by the Meetinghouse leading up to Halloween. And let me know if you have any winter wonderland decorations for our trunk at the Provincetown Greet and Treat event this year. And finally, it is a beautiful day, so we hope that those of you attending in person will stay a while after service for some coffee and good conversation out on our lawn. Now let's continue by affirming our community's covenant. And I invite you to repeat each line after me. Love is the spirit of this meeting house.
Love is the spirit of this meeting house.
This is our great covenant.
This is our great covenant.
To dwell together in peace.
To dwell together in peace.
To seek the truth in love.
To seek the truth in love.
And to help one another.
And to help one another.
At this time, I invite Bruce to light our chalice for us. As we light our chalice here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you watching from home to light a candle wherever you are. In that way, we can feel connected even while we are apart.
To Bear Love into This World by Rachel Hayes. We light our chalice this morning with our hearts turned to the work of our congregation. We have inherited this institution from 10 generations of people who believed in the power of human beings to bear love for the world. We carry this tradition for those who find comfort, inspiration, and joy within its physical and virtual spaces. We tend the spark of imagination and hope for the world to come.
Thank you. Please join me now in a spirit of meditation and prayer. If you have a joy or a sorrow on your heart this morning, you are welcome to light a silent candle during the prayer or at any time during the service at the table to the right of the pulpit. And there is a journal there to record your thoughts and prayers. Our prayer this morning is by Reverend Richard Fuchs, who writes, "Some of us don't believe in prayer. We're more comfortable with meditation, particularly the silent part. And some of us aren't sure we believe in God, or we scarcely know what the word means. But we do know that we care about one another and the kind of world we live in. We care. And sometimes the care we feel scares us because we're afraid to care too much. Too much for those we love, too much for friends and companions along the way, too much for all the poverty, pain, and injustice in the world. Too much for those who suffer needlessly and without cause. Too much for the waving grain and falling leaves, the passing of transient beauty before our eyes. Too much for the depth of anguish and grief we might feel if we allowed ourselves to care so much for what can so easily be lost. If we could pray out of the deep well of our capacity to care, we might say, let this care we feel become the bond of love that unites and heals us within and without, that joins us in body and spirit with the hopes and aspirations of people everywhere. Let our loving concern for those in our midst be the spark that inflames our loving concern for all humanity. And if we can't pray for lack of words or for too little belief in the power of prayer, then let our care be our prayer. And may we find the answers to all our prayers, spoken and unspoken, in the daily human expression of our loving concern. Hear our prayer, now and here and everywhere. Amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Three Gratitudes by Carrie Newcomer. Every night before I go to sleep, I say out loud 3 things that I'm grateful for. All the significant, insignificant, extraordinary, ordinary stuff of my life. It's a small practice and humble. And yet I find I sleep better holding what lightens and softens my life, ever so briefly, at the end of the day. Sunlight and blueberries, good dogs and wool socks, a fine rain, a good friend, fresh basil and wild phlox. My father's good health, my daughter's new job. The song that always makes me cry, always at the same part, no matter how many times I hear it. Decent coffee at the airport. And your quiet breathing, the stories you told me, the frost patterns on the windows, English horns and banjos, wood thrush and June bugs, the smooth glassy calm of the morning pond, an old coat, a new poem, my library card, and that my car keeps running despite all the miles. And after 3 things, more often than not, I get on a roll and I just keep going on. I keep naming and listing, and I lie grinning, blankets pulled up to my chin, awash with wonder at the sweetness of it all.
Now is the time in our service where we take a collection for the ongoing support of this Meetinghouse and our shared ministry. As we enjoy a musical reflection by our very special guest, we welcome your donations here in the sanctuary or online through PayPal or Venmo. You can find that information on our website, uumh.org. On and off-site, your offerings will now be gratefully received.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I'll never blow it out, no, I'm gonna let it shine. I'll never blow it out, no, I'm gonna let it shine. I'll never blow it out. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Just like the moon, I'm gonna let it shine. Just like the sun, I'm gonna let it shine. Just like the stars, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, tell me now, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I bring you greetings from Fayetteville, Arkansas, from your sister congregation in Fayetteville.
Please send our greetings back in return.
Yes.
Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky. Hafiz. It can be draining, this constant charting of accounts. Who owes who what? How much she has compared to me? How many more times I've shown up than him? I've vacuumed twice, and they've only done the bathrooms once. What if our only calculation was this question? What is the most generous response I can have to this situation? Grieg Cozier worked at the University of Victoria in Canada. He could rattle on about the research being done by the graduate students in the biology department about the intricacies of their work on Gaucher disease or Sanfilippo syndrome. He was a constant presence in the room as students defended their master's and doctoral theses. Cozier awarded one of the most coveted prizes at the university and hosted a dinner for 12 honored students each year at a Victoria restaurant funded out of his own pocket. Before his death in 2017, Grieg Cozier had worked for the university for 22 years. He was the night janitor. Although Cozier's learning disability made it a challenge to get through the 10th grade, he managed to get a job as a restaurant dishwasher, then a janitor, and that led to the night custodian's job at the university. A man of few resources, he was always generous with the students who he saw working late into the night. They were kind of in his way as he tried to clean, but they were so focused, so determined. He gave them little gifts to keep their spirits up. The university is a wonderful place to work, he said, full of youth and energy. He enjoyed the transformation as first-year students finally found their focus in grad school. It's their stick-to-itedness that he admired. And it's that quality that he wanted to reward. So for years, biology grad students vied to win the custodian's trophy. He awarded it to the student who he, as night custodian, most often saw burning the midnight oil. He also awarded the dinner for 12 to the best speaker at the annual grad student symposium and a $200 scholarship to a student working in microbiology. The dinners and scholarships costed Cozier about $600 a year. "I save up," he said. "It makes me feel good." He was a really interesting guy, said David Stuss, whose late-night work on the neurological disorder Rett syndrome won him the custodian's trophy one year. Cozier's curiosity, his involvement in the grad students' research was remarkable, Stuss says. And perhaps the most remarkable thing about him, though, was his generosity. What is the most generous response I can have to this situation? A number of years ago, my uncle and my father were both in the hospital for operations on the same day. While we nervously waited in the family room at Mass General, my aunt and cousins were doing the same at a Washington, D.C. hospital. My uncle's surgery was made more complicated because he has von Willebrand disease. It's a factor VIII blood clotting disorder. The 3 separate surgical procedures that he was undergoing required the intravenous administering of a blood clotting drug called Humate P. It's the drug that hemophiliacs use to assist in their clotting. And it's such an expensive drug that generally hospitals do not stock it. Hemophiliacs maintain their own stocks of Humate P and buy it directly from the few pharmacies that stock it. Humate P comes in a complex kit that requires assembling to ensure the various parts of the formula are correctly mixed and properly prepared prior to being intravenously given. It's an assembly so complex that if you've not done it before, you're in big trouble. And that is what happened early in the morning during the preparation for my uncle's surgery. Arriving before 5 a.m. with a 6-pack cooler of Humate P, he was greeted by nurses who were totally dumbfounded by the instructions. Humate P is made by a German company, so the instructions are an English translation. The family watched as a group of nurses held up various parts, trying to put them together in all kinds of combinations. Finally, everyone agreed that they needed to call the hematology clinic, who in turn called their head nurse, who during the summers ran camps for children suffering from hemophilia. When she received the call, the nurse was on a city bus. My uncle was headed into surgery. She went forward and explained the situation to the bus driver. We'll never know exactly what the conversation was between the nurse and the bus driver, but we do know that the bus driver broke his route and delivered her to the door of the hospital. She rushed to the surgery prep space, quickly grabbed all the parts, and adeptly put them all together and administered the Humate P. I hope the bus driver didn't get in trouble. Maybe in that moment of decision, he asked himself, what is the most generous response I can have to this situation? We shared this reading with you a month or two ago in worship. A one-paragraph newspaper article describes a subway platform during the morning rush hour at Grand Central Terminal. A train pulls in, a well-dressed woman gets off. Before the doors close, the woman realizes that she is holding only one of her leather gloves. She looks back into the train and spots the matching one on a seat. It's obviously too late to dash back in to retrieve it, so with a cavalier shrug, she flings out her arm and, the doors about to close, tosses her other glove onto the seat alongside its mate. The doors shut and the train pulls away. In his book, The Generosity Path, Mark Ewert tells us that generosity is something that we can cultivate within ourselves. We are not just born with a certain level of charity or understanding in our hearts. We don't just learn it from our families, although we do in part learn it there. It's something that can be grown and fostered and trained. It begins by being generous with ourselves, he says. Beginning your day with some fulfilling self-care will build your balance and clarity so that you are more able to address what you encounter during the day. That might be a few minutes staying in your warm, cozy bed before starting the day. It could mean prayer or meditation first thing in the morning, or a walk to see the dawning light and smell the morning air. Mornings are often times of rushing and frustration, so be gentle and create joy for yourself and for your family by finding a way to be gracious. It will color the rest of your day, he says. Ewert also reminds us that feeling gratitude is what opens our hearts in order to share with others. Feeling blessed enables us to share our blessings more freely. Not feeling particularly blessed today? Think about the planet that we are living on, he tells us. Remember that in spite of its struggles, this planet is an incredible gift to all of us. It provides sustenance, pleasure for all our senses, and infinite variety. We are surrounded by this beauty, he says, which is ever-changing and recurring. So we can experience familiar pleasures repeatedly. Think sunsets and moonrises, the changing tides in the marshes, millions of stars becoming visible each night. Blessed. Our birth was a fortunate gift from our parents, he says. Our bodies and minds are miraculous systems that allow us to create, understand, calculate, and dream. Each person is born with the ability to seek and find satisfaction, no matter their circumstances. People love us, and we love other people. We are the beneficiaries of generations of inventors and designers who have created wonderful processes and objects that make our lives easier. Millions of thinkers and teachers have gone before us, and we are the inheritors of that knowledge. Blessed. Once we recognize the richness of our own blessings, we are better able to be generous. Generous with our listening, generous with our kindness, generous with our time, generous with our money, generous with our patience, our understanding, our energy. There are experiences and people and places that help us on our generosity path, says Ewart. There are people who model it for us, experiences that reinforce how good it feels to be generous, negative experiences even, that teach us to be generous in different, more intentional, or more boundaried ways. Church is one of those places where our giving can be nurtured, cultivated, and nuanced, where we are asked to be intentional about our generosity, where we work out how to give energy without being burned out, where we are pushed to be more spacious in our acceptance of others, where we are exposed to hundreds of social justice causes and challenged to choose just a few to commit to wholeheartedly, where we are asked to give financially not just once, but each week in an ongoing commitment to building and sustaining a community. This fostering of generosity is what enables this place to be here. We are 100% reliant on generosity. But it is also a mission of this faith community to grow generosity in each of us so that we can be better stewards of this earth, better friends to each other, better citizens of our larger communities, better listeners and neighbors and parents and caretakers and activists and politicians and teachers and nurses and janitors and bus drivers. I am unbelievably humbled by the generosity of this congregation. And I'm in a unique position to see it because I get to see not only the visible Sunday morning gifts, but also all the behind the scenes generosity. And 10 years in, I can tell you, I have seen so much. You've sponsored a nursing student in Malawi, raised money for Ukraine and Pakistan and the Bahamas. You helped to purchase a van at the border to help with refugees. You stand for racial justice during our monthly vigils and go to workshops that help us look at how we've been raised and what systems we are part of and how we can do better by each other. When Lisa and I were hosting foster children, you babysat, tutored, brought gifts back from your travels. During the pandemic, you reinvented every ritual and held them in parking lots and in our front yard so that you could still gather together. Dozens of you have been brave enough to get up in this pulpit and talk about your own spiritual journeys, what you've learned about time and healing and radical self-tenderness. You give rides to each other, to doctor's appointments, and bring each other chicken soup, whatever the vegan equivalent of that is. You dressed up as pirates or farmers to hand out candy to children on Halloween in a safe environment. You baked blueberry muffins for our depression support circle, Blueberry Muffins and the Blues. You lend each other medical equipment and cover the costs when someone's bills add up to too much. Sometimes you just sit and let each other cry. You grieve together and face hard things. You celebrate birthdays and milestones. You visit each other in the hospital and walk each other's dogs and include people, even when their word retrieval or memory are gone. You help each other with canes and walkers and hearing devices, all the extra stuff you didn't used to need. You send items to our little free pantry once a month, even though you live out of state. You help each other to get sober and stay sober. You came in every Friday for months to clean mold off of every surface so that I can breathe safely in my office. You bring worship to kids with special needs at a residential school 4 towns away. You offer winter spirituality workshops so that we don't get too lonely or isolated in the cold, snowy months. You learn new pronouns and how to introduce yourself with yours. And you don't always get it right, but you are working on it. You do things that were never in the job description of the committee you joined. Mastering audiovisual equipment and uploading videos to YouTube, hiring lawyers and digging into estate law, navigating flood insurance claims, buying a parsonage to ensure that you can have a minister who lives here. And when I was diagnosed with a neurological facial disorder, you gave me a month off and then welcomed me back with open arms, even though I was not yet myself again. And you ride the waves of that illness with me. And you gather online midweek and sink deep into the questions and hold each other's joys and sorrows with a tenderness that I have never seen before. Yes, I am humbled by the generosity of this congregation. We come to this place for many reasons. Just one reason is that we are on a generosity path, and it helps to have places and people in our lives that encourage us to take steps to more generous living. Places and people that ask us to be intentionally generous, building that generosity muscle until giving is more and more natural to us, so that one day, when we are getting off a subway and we realize that we've left our favorite glove inside, our natural, instinctive reaction will not be to clutch the remaining glove in sadness and loss, but to fling it through the closing doors so that if we can no longer have them, at least someone can. What is the most generous response I can have to this situation? This morning, I thank you all for your generosity. I thank you for coming here on Sundays with your heart open to the messages you receive here. even when having an open heart is hard. I thank you for showing up for each other. I thank you for being generous with your time, being generous with your energy. I thank you for being generous with your financial gifts, for pledging your support of this Meetinghouse in the fall of each year and putting your offerings in the plate each Sunday so that we can open our doors and our YouTube channel each week to so many people who need us. I thank you for being on a generosity path, for continuously reminding yourselves of the blessings that surround you, for continuously finding new ways to be open and giving to the world, often asking nothing in return. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky. Amen, and blessed be. It has become our practice to pose a question based on the theme of the service each week. It can be a topic of sharing out on the lawn today or with friends during the week. And if you want to delve deeper into this conversation, we hope you can join us Tuesday at 5 o'clock for our Zoom coffee hour. Let us know if you need that link. Our question for this week is, what is something generous you've seen someone from the Meetinghouse do? What is something generous that you've seen someone from the Meetinghouse do? And I'll end with these closing words. May you leave here knowing that you are blessed. May you continue each day to travel the path of generosity. And when fear or scarcity begin to take the lead, may the hope inside you lead the way. Go in peace.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.